Hey all, welcome to Served. I am Andy. With us, as always, JW, Techie Sean, producer Mike, I think is in an airport lounge. Is that did you, how's that lounge access?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good. Good internet. Yeah. Better than what we had in the studio.
Okay, good.
Sean saved the day.
Good. Worth the price of admission then, I guess.
What are you in? You're in the PTPA?
Okay. There's not enough. I was going to be very nice, JW, before you appealed to my petty side. I was going to say thanks for the feedback on the PTPA episode. Listen, it's the most polarizing feedback that we've gotten for a show. Normally it's like, yeah, we enjoyed the show. And this time it was like, yeah, you're kind of a dick, but it was an important conversation. And I don't disagree with any parts of that. I also, if there's a disagreement and someone kind of publicly invites themselves on, I'm going to press. So that can come off the way it comes off. Hopefully you learned something. I certainly did. Also, thank you for watching the Rafa episode that we did last week. We get off air and you don't know how it goes, and you hope you were able to represent kind of the magnitude of your feelings towards someone and the magnitude of your respect towards someone. I hope we did that. Thank you for watching. It's one of our highest, most viewed shows ever. Not surprising because Rafa's that guy. So we appreciate your feedback. One was kind of, I don't know, maybe we made it a little weird for you 2 shows ago. And the last one with Rafa, I think we all found a point of agreement where we just need to celebrate this guy as much as possible and look back and appreciate. And did you guys, JW, did you get into I got into like kind of the YouTube hole of Rafa highlights and top 10 points and all of these things and throughout the years. And I feel like I've spent 3 hours watching Rafa highlights in the last 4 days.
Yeah, they're, I've seen a lot of banana forehands in the last 72 hours. I just, the one thing I can't divorce myself from is the fury and then the joy, the sort of the mix. And it's usually as soon as the point is over, as soon as the match is over, he transforms into a completely different person. I just kept noticing the facial expression while the ball is in play versus him after the match or some of the shots off the court. You would think, 2 completely different people. I'm not sure I've ever seen an athlete transition quite so smoothly from like furious competitor to good dude.
Yeah, a couple of things that stood out were underrated ability to step in and rip cross court on the backhand side when needed, right? If there's someone that he can grind down, he was never in a rush to hit that shot. But when you're watching the highlight reels against Novak, against Roger, against other good players, his ability to hit, because he is naturally right-handed. He just decided to be one of the best players of all time in tennis, left-handed. The cross-court backhand pass on the full stretch and the amount of pace that he could create with that right hand, and also stepping up, and he hits his backhand cross like about as hard as anyone I've seen this side of Andre, when he decides that he wants to rip it. Those were, as I'm watching these highlights, and also the 7-10 split from outside the alley where, it passes you. And when it passes you, it's so stupid. When it passes you, it's outside the sideline, and you know that it's going to land a foot inside the sideline with the amount of work that he gets on it. I could watch that. You call it banana forehand. I mean, it's just, I don't think anyone has ever been able to manipulate the ball left to right off that side like he has, or right to left on the forehand side. Anyways, but I digress. Thank you for your feedback, positive, negative. We always appreciate all of you keeping it real with us, and we listen, and we will do better unless you thought we were great, and then we're just going to keep doing what we do. Anyways, let's get into Racket Rundown, brought to you by our friends at Wilson in celebration. I went full T, full company, man, today. But there were some exciting results this week. The women in Wuhan, Sabalenka, doing Sabalenka things and getting another win under her belt. Last week winning and then playing well again in Wuhan, and then beating the hometown favorite Qin Wen in the final. But listen, Sabalenka, back-to-back, tough matches, long extended matches. We know how great she is. We know that she's become more consistent. We know that she got over yips on her forehand. The one thing we don't talk about enough with Sabalenka, because you try to have a different take on people, her fitness, we don't talk about enough. Right? End of the year, when you see everyone tapping out and like being emotional, and we can talk about Medvedev and Francis in a second, because I could certainly, listen, we don't agree with some of the stuff they do, but I sit back and once I get past the initial shock of France's meltdown, I kind of start laughing because I've done it too. And this is the time of year where you see us all get a little petty. Tsitsipas and Zverev were kind of feeling sorry for themselves a little bit in the commentary of their matches as well. But Sabalenka showing up, just being physical, responding to long matches, has a long one with Coco, comes back, is able to get mentally up again. I don't think we give her enough credit for the fitness leaps that she's made in the last couple of years. I mean, that's another thing that kind of just gets accepted and we kind of move on. But we should spend a second on that, shouldn't we, JW?
It's all, to me, sort of under the rubric of professionalism. Yeah. And you sort of look at the landscape of women's tennis right now, and Rybakina is cloaked in mystery, and we hope she's okay. It's a little concerning to read some of these secondhand accounts. And we've talked a lot about Coco and what she's going through in terms of personnel and in terms of, some of the yips that have come into her game. Iga's made a coaching change. And here's Sabalenka, who's just kind of cruising along. And I think you're right. I think some of this is just the durability. It's the middle of October. She's still winning big titles. Some of it is being able to play, win matches when she's not playing her best. And all of this just sort of goes, who would have thought a few years ago that she would be this beacon of stability? But the fact that she is in unimpeachable physical condition, that she's still doing it in the middle of October, to me, it's sort of all under this headline of, she does a lot of things right that maybe a few years ago were lacking.
Yeah, and I think all of that leads to the difference between a very good player and someone who is now great, right? Is the consistency to win with less than your best stuff, the consistency of mentality, the consistency of professionalism, all of that, when you combine it with generational power, it manifests itself in what we're seeing with Aryna Sabalenka, and it's hard to argue against. You mentioned with Iga, with the coaching change, taking some time off. She has been, Iga has been very outspoken about the fact that she is a little, why did I say it like that? A little rundown. So I think, leader in the clubhouse for year-end number one, she's slightly ahead in the race. I mean, you take Sabalenka at this point, don't you? I mean, nothing would surprise me with Iga, but we don't know how much she's going to play towards the end of the year, but I think Sabalenka is certainly making the case for number one, and I think it'd be deserved.
Yeah, I mean, whose year lay it all out in two majors? And keep in mind, Sabalenka had she didn't post at Wimbledon, as we have talked about several times, as you well know. Whose year would you rather have? Simply, I would be in the Sabalenka camp right now. But no, I mean, I also let's also, she was in Coco's match. I think she was broken like 6 or 7 times out of 13 service games. I mean, she is playing well and winning when she's not. She's winning when she's not necessarily playing well. Did you catch the empathy with Coco? And I think we're going to be talking about Sabalenka for a long, long time as a player who had a serious case of the yips. Didn't just overcome them. I mean, remember that Australian Open when she was serving underhand, and if she had single-digit double faults, she was doing cartwheels. And now, a few years later, not just overcoming that, but giving counsel and giving encouragement to other competitors and other colleagues and other rivals who are going through that. This has kind of been the year of Aryna Sabalenka.
Yeah, I think like that counsel, that counsel would be something that I think would be a lot more detailed if Sabalenka was on the tail end of her career, as opposed to knowing that she has to beat Coco for the next 5 years, acknowledging that I had the yips and now you have the yips and someone can get over it. Not a full dig in the weeds there, but listen, we're talking about Coco. I want to give credit where credit's due, because the loss at the U.S. Open, the 11 or 12 doubles in that third set, the questions post Brad Gilbert, dealing with a lot of things to create a bit of a momentum set, even with, the second serve rearing its ugly head again against Sabalenka, almost winning that match. These two things are rarely said. They can rarely be true. Someone has full-blown yips on one shot, probably has yips adjacent where there is some work to be done on the forehand. I don't think anyone would say anything different. And also, she just went back up to number 3 in the world with having dealt with these things all year, which is crazy town, right? I think the rest of her game has become so much better than even it was a year ago that she will self-correct this at some point. I have full faith, right? I think she's committed to it. She is a hard worker. It's not going to get better overnight. It's not like flipping a switch. But all of these things that we constantly harp on and are negative about, and probably fairly so, she's back up to 3 in the world and she's 20 years old. Can we take a step back and be realists for a second? That's pretty impressive. And the mental gymnastics that she's having to go through, and also somehow finding momentum in the face of these struggles is impressive in its own way.
Let me give you a hot take and tell me where you are. If this is realistic to goofy optimism, tell me where you are on this. 2024, blessing in disguise for Coco Gauff. It's like you're third in the league in scoring and your free throw percentage is 40%. Well, hey, fix this and you're in business. This is not the year she necessarily wanted on paper after winning the last major of 2023, but in the span of a career, knowing that she can play at this level and still hang in the top 3 with these defects in her game, I wonder if in a weird way, back end of her career, a few years down the road, this isn't actually a disguised blessing. Well, agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think we'll see. You never choose to struggle like this, but what I will say is when these things improve a little bit, her confidence has to be through the roof. To say, I got through this year, she's just building up mental reserves is what she's doing, right? And when she takes off again, it's going to be those matches where instead of winning 6-4, 6-5, it's going to be 2-2. She to your point, there are a lot of women in the top 10, a lot of men in the top 10, top 20 that you can point to and say, I don't know where they have a significant amount of improvement that's realistic, right? Are they the best version of who they're going to be, or are they close to it? And I'd say more often than not, most people you can say, yeah, that's a bet. And it's a compliment. You've worked so hard. You've done as much as you can with what you have. The obvious glaring one on both sides who hasn't gotten there is Coco, and she's a Grand Slam champion and backs it up with a year where she's 3 in the world. Let's quickly get to, I just want to quickly, Queen Wen, right? Playing at home is not easy. Playing at home with the fame set that she has post-Olympics and that expectation set is not easy. I thought she accounted really well for herself the last couple of weeks, because we used to see, like Maresmo was open about saying at Roland Garros, I enjoy it, but it's also the nerviest couple of weeks of the year for me playing at home with those expectations. I was really, really impressed with the way that she kind of navigated those expectations at home and really had some quality wins.
Li Na used to say that she had more pressure, she felt, playing these events in China than she did playing in the finals of majors. And I don't think, we've heard from Chinese players saying even like, I care more about the Asian Games performance than how I play at Wimbledon. Why? Because that's where the expectation of the federation, the country, at some level, the government, the fans. I don't think we can underestimate the pressure that a top player, fresh from winning a gold medal, embedded in the top 10, the pressure she has of coming to China to play. That is not similar to any other athlete in the sport in any other situation, really. And yeah, for her to play this well, I think really, really says something. You wish, wish the handshake had been a little warmer. We wish, had she won the title, it would be a different narrative. But overall, I think you're right. And I think that that's something we don't talk enough about in this sport. The pressures that are on some of these athletes in some of these contexts. Chinese player, fresh from an Olympic gold, going to play 2 big events in China. That's Andy Murray at Wimbledon level pressure right there.
Yeah, or just shy of it anyways. And listen, I'm able to separate a handshake from the tennis she played. Would I have wanted that to be better? Sure. Did she play great tennis under all of the things that we just said? Yes. Those can be the same conversation to me, but I was impressed. We're going to get to a quick break real quick. On the other side of this, we're going to talk a little bit about Sinner and Novak. I mean, just showing up, playing tennis, and making the finals of a Masters 1000 at age 37. A lot of good stuff happening there. We're going to get to Francis's meltdown, Medvedev, kind of the same situation, and his pettiness is endlessly amusing to me. We'll be right back. Let me try that again. We will be right. Don't edit this. We will be right back after the break. I'm a professional. This is Serve. Hey there, Chuckers. You know, I used to rely on precision, power, and maybe a little bit of innovation to keep my serve untouchable. Well, turns out those same things aren't just for tennis. They're for racing too. Who knew? Since 2017, Lexus Racing has been doing exactly that. Precision, power, and a whole lot of innovation. Last year, they teamed up with Vassar Sullivan and snagged the 2023 IMSA GTD Pro Class Championship with their Lexus RCF GT3. And let me tell you, that car has got more horsepower than I ever had in my serve. Don't tell my ego. But like any good athlete, one win just isn't enough. All right, a little too personal, but that's fine. They're back and they're gunning for another title in 2024. You can't miss those Dayglow yellow and black Lexus RCF GT3 race cars on the track. And if you do somehow miss them, you'll definitely hear those V8 engines roaring louder than my victory yell after a big match. So if you want to see what happens when you mix tennis-worthy precision with race car power, follow Lexus Racing every weekend. Head over to lexus.com/motorsports to learn more about Lexus Racing and get all the details on the upcoming races. For someone who I consider myself present, pretty motivated most of the time, I didn't have to work real hard to want to win a match or show up or be prepared. Or the hardest time of year for me was this post-US Open run where you're just kind of trying to tack on points, but you're not quite building to Australia yet. And you would see people just fucking lose it a little bit. And I was often a participant where it'd be like 2-all in the first set. I'd be up 30-love on my serve. I'd miss a ball and just sling a racket like out of nowhere. Just psychotic. Like I was just, on the edge of anger and just being tapped out. And we saw that a lot in Shanghai. And I tend to laugh about these things more than I probably should. Francis kind of like, okay, so that if we're setting, I mean, we talked about this in New York and I told you guys we're doing this, and guys and gals were doing this, is the shot clock. The easiest way to reset it is to fake a toss, right? But basically the ruling on Francis was you didn't pretend enough for me to make me think that it was a realistic attempt, where if we're going letter of the law, it should have reset when Francis tossed the ball, no matter what it looked like. Like if you're going to let everyone get away with it all year long, but because they're faking and going through this weird end around of this dumb rule where, the toss isn't part of the serve, which I'll never believe anyways. And I was soundly beaten down when we put the poll up on Serve Social. I said the toss should, like, if you catch a toss, that should be a fault. That's the simplest way to get around all of this crap. But this was happening where people would be down to 1 or 2 on the shot clock. They'd step up to the line, fake toss, catch it, and then they're allowed as much time as they want. They go through the full toss or bouncing the ball. Another 10 seconds goes by. It's almost a net negative as far as timing goes if you allow this rule. Francis didn't do anything different than anyone else has done all year. He basically just made a mockery of it, which, apparently if you mock it, it's too far. If you do it and pretend like you're being real, then it's fine. Anyways, he goes on to lose the match. And then he loses it, says, F you, F you, F you, in no uncertain terms to the umpire. Quickly says, I probably shouldn't have said that. What are we going to say? He tapped out. He made a mistake. Probably lucky he didn't get suspended. Probably felt like a fine was a win at that point. I get it. But I'm kind of more annoyed by the general allowance of the toss and then switching the rules because someone's kind of making a mockery of something that's stupid in the first place.
Do you ever lose it like that? I mean, that was a real meltdown.
Yeah, I did. I got passed. I remember one time in Indian Wells, I was playing Gasquet and I got passed, but I made it sound like a grunt. So like as I'm getting passed, I'm like, and I said exactly what Francis said to the umpire and I got a warning. I'm like, that was my grunt. He's like, your grunt was fuck you? I was like, yes. And I lied. I lied about it.
talk about that was a weird. I think some of this is context, right? Like anyone within tennis knows that this is not Francis, and let's not, define him by his worst moment. It's late in the season. The circumstances, as you said, this shot clock is really sidebar conversation for another time. But it's also the shot clock's also the reason why the ball kids are back to picking up the sweaty, snotty towels. Shot clock's problematic. All that said, imagine if this is another sport and an athlete goes up to official and whatever. Well, I forget what the F-bomb count was. It was 11 or 13. I mean, Francis loves the NBA. If this were a member of the Washington Wizards who went up to Steve Javy or, went up to the official and 13 times used F-bombs, that's a 10-game suspension. And it's also immediate.
I heard like two. I heard like 2 or 3. Was it 13? No.
I think it was 11 or 13. It was double figures.
It was a lot.
Sure.
Was it? I might not have watched the full clip. I kind of got the gist of it after 2.
It was 2 or 3 in the first. Yeah, it was 2 or 3 in the first second and a half, which was impressive.
That felt like enough for me.
Yeah. Is it a little weird that we're talking about this a week later and no penalty's been announced?
He got fined. I thought they announced it was not nothing. It was like 25. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it was like a significant fine.
Check that.
Like immediately.
Zverev got 40. I mean, what Zverev did in Mexico a few years ago, I've never seen anything. I mean, that to me is the standard. And that was 40 grand. So that's kind of setting our
this is less setting
than that. Our parameters right there.
He broke a racket on the umpire chair, like right below the foot. That was worse than what Francis did. Like words are different than like a violent physical action towards or near an umpire. Right. Like I mean,
no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So 25 feels right if he was 40.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's our conversion chart. If doing like the Paul Bunyan with the if lumberjacking the umpire's chair is a 40 grand, 11 or 13, whatever the number is, F-bombs is probably going below that. But no, I think the other thing that we can maybe save for another time too. This has been a bit of a slow build for the player treatment of officials, which there's a Jay McEnroe. This is nothing new to 2024, but it's kind of like grown a tail and it's gotten a little out of control. But I think everyone knows Francis to be a good guy, and this being wildly out of character and not some window into a dark soul. So I think everybody's response is pretty much a roll of the eyes and nothing more than that. Listen, what do you think?
In no uncertain terms, you can't do that and not expect penalty. He said, I can't do that. So what are we going to say? At that point, what are we going to say? People are going to be like, I can't believe you were laughing about that. I can't not laugh. I'm sorry. Like I'm laughing because I have done petulant, immature, emotional stuff where an hour later I've been like, I'm just not like a good human because that was a horrible thing to say or do to someone else. If Francis would have tried to, it would have annoyed me more had Francis tried to like explain it away, or kind of we've seen some professional victimhood from some of the players, when arguing with officials this week saying, you're out to get me. If he would have gone with that, I would have kind of rolled my eyes and maybe had a stronger feeling. Someone comes out and says right away, I was wrong. I know I'm wrong. I'll be better. Like, what are we going to say? Like, what are we going to say? We're going to critic, but kick a dead horse or something. That's not what we're going to do. We all, I think everyone has got a little crazy Magoo in them at this point in the year. It is a long year. We have talked about it ad nauseum. One thing I want to talk about, and this is, I guess, is an extended version of Racket Rundown brought to you by Wilson, is on the men's side. No surprise, Sinner, Novak final. Like Novak coming back and going through a Masters 1000 draw at 37, he hasn't played since the Open. I guess he played Davis Cup, but hasn't played an ATP match since the Open. I was struck by his press conference afterwards when someone asked about the negative results. I thought his take was completely rational, right? In a world where we kind of train ourselves, and especially the great ones, almost train yourself to be a master of being irrational sometimes. Someone asked, he goes, yeah, like, listen, this is my worst performing year for a long time. It was bound to happen at some point. I'm still happy with my gold medal. Oh, by the way. But let's think about this just for a second and put it in the terms of like normies. like his worst performing year ever. He made the semifinals of Australia, the finals of Wimbledon, won Olympic gold, finals of Masters 1000. Like that's a career year for most of us. And he's going, well, this disappointing Wimbledon final gold medal winning thing was something I'm just going to have to live with, and not in a bad way because that's his reality. But I thought it was completely rational. Like it is coming at some time. He is not, 30 anymore. And there's two monsters on the other side of the net that he has to compete with their primes. But I thought it was a completely rational take by Novak, and a crazy impressive week.
Did you also catch his speech and even his social media after that match? I mean, I think one thing, whatever the opinions are, this guy has a lot of angles. Some of them are conflicting. One thing that you have to give, I don't think I've ever seen an athlete, never mind a tennis player, so consistently gracious in defeat. I mean, when he loses, it's all credit to the other guy, and he acknowledges the other guy's team and eye-to-eye handshakes. And I think you're right. He was really rational about this year, and he said, look, I'm 37 years old. I'm playing, let's be honest here, guys. I'm playing for the majors. I'm playing for Davis Cup. And still, on the other side of the world, in October, months away from the next major, he's getting to the final and playing a fairly tight match against the number one player in the world. If this is a down, and the other thing too, that's funny about all this Novak talk is we're still not talking about his age. I mean, this guy is 30 months away from turning 40, and we talk about his decline and he's losing a couple miles an hour. I mean, I feel like the match analysis was not, Jannik Sinner's beating a guy 15 years older who's playing on his last legs. It was about X's and O's, and it was about getting out of the corners and Novak's backhand. If this is a rotten year, I think a lot of players would sign up for it. But this also does not necessarily seem like a coda, right? I mean, this doesn't seem as though he's kind of angling down into a retirement announcement. Seems like a guy who's ready to sort of take some time off, play the Davis Cup, and see if he can't win another major in Australia. But it does not seem like we're falling off a cliff here.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a difference with the way that he's talking about it now. And not so many words. And these are me. Let me be very clear. This is me translating what he has said. He goes, I don't care about ATP finals. I'm not going to chase points. So and the way that I digest that is I'm not searching for ranking anymore. I'm not in the business of trying to be number one over Alcaraz or Sinner or these other guys who can play 10 more tournaments than I do. To your point, my focus is doing what I want to do. So maybe that's playing for Serbia in Davis Cup here and there, pretty consistently playing some team events, which is great. And trying to find out the best schedule and the trade-off between getting enough matches for slams without ever overplaying again in my entire life. So he knows that this is the thing where instead of dominating majors, he is going to maintain a very high level of tennis, and hey, maybe I can sneak a couple more along the way before that door closes, and if and when it does. But I think it's a completely rational, professional, smart way to kind of think about the things now. He knows he doesn't have to be better than Alcaraz and Sinner over 52 weeks, right? I don't think he's trying to do that. I don't think that's where his motivation lies. It's basically, can I catch lightning in a bottle like I did at the Olympics and beat, Alcaraz, who was the best player in the moment? Then can I sneak out those big wins? And is there some runway left in those? And how do I best achieve that without having the massive life trade-off that I've committed to for 20 years?
He has three things that neither Sinner nor Alcaraz has. 2 kids and a wife. And you ask him about longevity and you ask him about his career. Yeah. And he sort of, his standard line is, I may have lost a step of foot speed, but I make up for it with experience. But you really press him. And he doesn't talk about knees and elbows and wrists. What he talks about is missing back to school night. And my wife is home and she's the one that's schlepping the kids to their lessons. And his son loves tennis and he doesn't get to play with him enough. I think his family priorities and the fact that his kids are now of an age where they miss their dad, and he's very open about his wife has done a lot of the parental legwork while he's in Melbourne, Australia, and Shanghai, China. That to me is more a sort of factor in his longevity than whether his physical durability is going to hold up as he's in his late 30s.
Yeah, and the other side of the coin is Sinner, who is if he's not in his prime, he's certainly close to it. right? I mean, he's playing about as well as you can. Undoubtedly the best hardcourt player in the world right now, not based on legacy. To still go, Novak's won 10 times. Like, okay, not ever, but like in this current moment, it's hard to argue against it. I think 4 out of the last 5 against Novak, 2 hardcourt majors this year. So put your feelings aside and let's deal with the last 52 weeks of that comment, which I feel pretty confident in. But man, before the Asian swing, WADA comes out and they're all over him now, and they're looking, at a 1 or 2 year suspension. What he thought was maybe something that was in the past, at least as far as the moving parts of it, is back, and he's still producing, right? Like the mental toll of not knowing isn't presenting itself in his tennis. And I don't know if being on the court is a form of therapy, because you have to make a decision 30 seconds at a time. So therefore your mind doesn't wander to what's off the court. But listen, regardless of what you think, if you think that, he shouldn't be suspended at all, great. If you think he should get all of it, great. Those two things can be true. And also dealing with the mental scar tissue that has to be there. I mean, he's doing an unbelievable job of it, and just going through the consistency is just phenomenal right now.
Yeah, and the fact that this is an open-ended question, not just in terms of penalty. I mean, I've got this on really good sourcing that at the U.S. Open, he comes in, he gave a press conference, he obviously won the title. He did not think that this CAS appeal was coming. I mean, I think he thought, this WADA appeal. I mean, I think he thought the decision is decision, and this is an unfortunate moment, and now I can move forward. I do not think that he thought in October we'd still be talking about this, and that there would be this WADA appeal. I think one thing is just the uncertainty of it all in terms of what the penalty is. I think also it's the timing, right? I mean, it's not as though they said, hey, listen, on December 1st, we're going to issue our judgment. I'm told that ideally this gets done by the end of the year, but there's a big tournament in January. He's a defending champion. It must be really strange not to know if you will be eligible. But his ability to compartmentalize, I mean, the cliche is competing in tennis is going to be his sanctuary with all this instability outside the court. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but what he is doing in the face of this sort of swirling, this cloud of controversy with no fixed date of resolution, I think is really impressive in its way. And I mean, again, we'll see what WADA and CAS does. They're just to repeat was in their legal filing. I mean, this does not seem to be. They don't take issue with the fault or the negligence. They just take fault with the responsibility. And we'll see which way the judgment goes. And with any luck, one way or the other, we'll have some sort of outcome by the end of the year. Yeah,
WADA's not coming in because they're saying, oh, he definitely improved and enhanced performance by virtue of what he took. It's basically, was the ruling of no fault, no negligence, cross T's, dot I's, was it correct or the way that we would have ruled on it? And I don't know. That's probably over my pay grade. Do you know something that WADA definitely does not have a problem with, JW?
What's that? Oh, segue.
They have no problem. They have no, you can't test positive for Olipop. You can just feel positive. There you go. Producer Mike can't see me, but you hear me. I know you hear me. On a more serious note, JW, I'm going to let you kind of riff here for a second, because there's a story that is a massive kind of cloud hanging over the tennis tours that was a huge story a couple of years ago. Nothing's really changed. I think we've all just kind of moved on with our lives, but that doesn't make the story less significant. Can you make us a little bit smarter? And I hope you know what I'm talking about. I
believe you speak of Peng Shuai, which has been I'm very much in my thoughts as tennis returns to China. Top line, I would love to this thing to be answered satisfactorily, and Peng Shuai appears. She says, listen, we're all good here, carry on. To me, this was sufficiently serious that the WTA 3 years ago.
JW, can you just reset?
Start at the beginning?
Yeah, we'll just reset the situation real quick before we kind of get it. Let's not assume that every listener knows exactly what happened and what the current situation is.
Okay, let me try to take you through this without notes and see as best as we can. 3 years ago, Peng Shuai, a decorated Chinese player, a veteran, ironically enough, known for being sort of very outspoken and challenging authority. She has a long, heartfelt, detailed, she has receipts, as the kids say. She has a long account of an alleged sexual assault by a high-ranking member of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. This is 3 years ago. This is not just a drive-by. I mean, this is a 1,400-word sort of cry for help with dates and instances and metaphors. Suddenly that is scrubbed from the internet, which I think is relevant here. If you're in China, you cannot read about this account. You cannot type in Wimbledon as a search term because there is fear that that will somehow allow you to backdoor this to Peng Shuai and this allegation. The WTA is rightfully concerned. Other players try to make contact with her. They cannot. The WTA at one point demands a full and transparent investigation into these allegations by a player. That seems like responsible stewardship and leadership. The Chinese government doesn't tend to respond well to demands for internal investigations, much less from a tennis tour. That demand did not go fulfilled, and the WTA suspended its business. Keep in mind, this is a big chunk of the WTA's business over their concerns about Peng Shuai. And there were sort of second-hand accounts that she was okay. She made some appearances, though in one of them you can actually see a minder from the party in a mirror. It did not give great confidence and strength. Peng Shuai, active on social media. She's disappeared from social media. The WTA has essentially pulled out of China, which is a big move. Remember, at the time, the year-end final, the greatest source of revenue for the WTA is in China. This is a big move. A year goes by or so, and the WTA cannot offset. It's a very moral stance. The WTA gets all sorts of plaudits on a global stage. They've confronted this authoritarian country. Starbucks and Apple and the NBA, they all do business with China and sort of hold their nose. Here is the WTA taking a stand, invoking Billie Jean King and this sort of spirit of human rights. And about a year later, they realized, boy, the balance sheets have gotten some holes blown in to them by this decision. And eventually pressure mounts. WTA announces sheepishly they are returning to China. They did not seem to make sure that their WTA finals would still be held there. So it's a little, I likened it to, honey, I'm ready to come home. I made a mistake walking out the door, and you don't check first to make sure that your honey hasn't shacked up with someone else. So the WTA sort of comes back, but strangely the finals are not part of the deal. Tennis is back in China, and we had a number of events, and there's now a Chinese player who is at the top of the game. That's great. But I'm not sure this Peng Shuai question has been answered with any real satisfaction. And it would be great if she were doing the coin flip and sitting in a box and presenting trophies, and we all said, okay, big misunderstanding, we're all good, let's move on. Peng Shuai's, she hasn't disappeared. She was allegedly playing tennis on the court of the Beijing event, but she still has no social media profile, I'm told. There are still players trying to get in touch with her. They have not been successful, I'm told. She has no listed agent, according to the tour. This has not been answered satisfactorily. And I think you look at this big picture, and it's disturbing. I mean, it would be great if Peng Shuai came up tomorrow and just said, hey, listen, guys, big misunderstanding. My life's fine. I'm going to go present the trophy to Arena Sabalenka. Let's get on with our lives, and we could all move on. That hasn't happened. And, at some level, it's great that tennis is back in this market. This is obviously the most populous country in the world. It's an essential market for any business, especially sports, to be in. That's great. But I'm not sure this question of Peng Shuai has really been addressed sufficiently. And it makes me a little uncomfortable, honestly. And I'd love for there to be a happy ending and we could all drop this and get on, but that hasn't happened. And for the WTA to sort of, make this very bold and very, I would say, courageous moral stance 3 years ago and bring up Billie Jean King and then just sort of drop it and move on without really reassuring us that the player at the center of this is doing okay and has her freedom and is happy and fulfilled. It, to me, just tinges all of this with a bit of, at a minimum, discomfort. That probably sounds too speechifying.
In my opinion, there's just no world where this is all some coincidence, right? Where she alleges this and then we don't ever hear from her in her own words, right? So we need to keep talking about it, even if it's not the story of the week, right? Listen, you guys are in the documentary space too. It seems like there's a hell of an opening to maybe have a longer conversation about this. But we hope that she is okay. She's not allowed to talk to anyone. No one's allowed to Google anything she said. I think if you do live in a place where there is freedom of the press, where you can have an opinion without being boxed out of life in any other place, we should maybe just pay attention to that and be thankful for that as well, and be, at least a little cognizant of the value of that. But we don't want this to go away just because we've washed our hands of it. And listen, I don't blame the WTA. I applauded them when they made a stand, but also the stand can't be at the expense of the survival of the tour financially, right? If they go bankrupt or lose their revenue streams and can't expand, then who wins, right? Who wins? Nobody is the answer. And I don't, like you said, I'm not sure what effect they have on the Chinese Communist Party by making a stand. I don't think they care at all what the WTA tour does, which is unfortunate. So we just can't let the story go away at scale. I think it is worth bringing it up, even if we're largely helpless, because nobody there will ever hear this. I'm pretty sure of it. Nobody will hear it. But anyways, thoughts for her. We hope that she is okay. Producer Mike, way to go from the airport lounge. See how important they are? After all, we got a show done. Look at that value add right there. Look at that value add, airport lounge. Maybe I was wrong about everything. JW, thanks for joining this week. Hopefully there is a happy ending to the story with Peng Shuai. Not good for now. We'd love to hear from her. I'm Andy Roddick. This has been Served. Thanks for listening, watching, or whatever the hell you're doing.